Hi and welcome to part 2 of my Hammer Studios Hidden Gems. Made for only £37,000 at Hammer's Bray Studios, this movie is widely considered to be one of Hammer's best. The setup is pretty simple. A small bank branch in the provinces 2 days before Christmas. The fastidious, anal-retentive bank manager Fordyke, played by Peter Cushing, is opening up the bank. He spends a bit of time reprimanding his staff for tiny infractions of the rules before an insurance inspector, played by Andre Morel, shows up to check the bank's security.
I'm on a tour of all your branches in the southwest. I'm sorry to spring myself on you in this way, but it's part of my job to see that people are on their toes.
Only he isn't who he says he is. He's a ruthless criminal who has meticulously planned the robbery of more than £90,000 from the bank. The criminal, Gore Hepburn, is everything Fordyke isn't. He's personable, charismatic, unflappable and charming. And he's kind of an ambiguous character from our point of view as well. He wants Fordyke to treat his staff better, at the very same time that he's stuffing suitcases full of £5 notes. There's some good secondary characters as well, particularly Richard Vernon's Pearson. Pearson's a really interesting character. Listen to his accent. When he's stressed out, he drops out of the formal received pronunciation and reverts to his working class speech patterns. That's a really nice touch.
Pearson, can't we straighten this ridiculous business out once and for all? I know we disagree about almost everything, that my way of looking at things irritates you.
I am not in the least interested in your way of looking at things.
But the movie's basically a two-hander between Cushing and Morel, and they're both at their career best in this small, perfect gem of a movie. At one level, it's a thriller filmed in a single in-studio set. At another, it's a smart variation of Dickens' A Christmas Carol, with Fordyke as Ebenezer Scrooge. Cash on Demand shows that budget doesn't matter as much as script and casting. Even in 1961, £37,000 wasn't a lot of money to make a movie with. In fact, it's much less than the suave, charismatic Gore Hepburn almost gets away with. Cash on Demand shows that it's based on a play, but that's not a weakness. I think it's a strength. It's a very well-honed script, really well produced. You should check it out. It's on several of the Hammer DVD box sets of the non-horror Hammer movies, and you shouldn't have too much trouble finding it if you look on eBay or Amazon. In Hammer's history, black humour rarely got blacker than this Jimmy Sangster script based on Bill McIlraith's play. Mrs. Taggart, the one-eyed matriarch of her family, gathers a clan to celebrate her wedding anniversary every year, even though her husband died many years before. This year the people attending are her 3 sons, Henry, Terry and Tom, Terry's wife Karen, and Tom's new girlfriend, who's secretly his fiancée Shirley, who quickly becomes the target of Mrs. Taggart's venom.
Tommy's taste is changing. He used to like a lot of flesh. You wouldn't fetch much on the butcher's slab.
Mrs. Taggart's a scheming, vindictive, sadistic monster who controls her family with emotional and actual blackmail, targeted cruelty, and passive-aggressive verbal abuse. Betty Davis, with her colour-coordinated eye patches, is manipulative motherhood personified. 3 of the cast from the play are retained for the movie: James Cozzens, Jack Hedley and Sheila Hancock. In fact, in the early 2000s, Sheila Hancock was cast as Mrs. Taggart in a stage revival of the original play. The dialogue in the anniversary is sharp and nasty and very funny. The campy outrageousness and deviousness of Mrs. Taggart balances out the viciousness. The making of the movie wasn't a happy project. Betty Davis had the original director Alvin Rakoff fired. He was soon replaced by Roy Ward Baker, and according to Hammer's official historian, she also made some serious attempts at seducing the scriptwriter Jimmy Sangster. If there is a weakness in the film and the original play, it's the treatment and approach to older son Henry's cross-dressing. Fortunately, culture and inclusion have moved on since the 1960s. The Anniversary is one of those films that reminds us that Hammer wasn't all about fangs, bosoms, and gallons of Kensington gore. The movie wasn't particularly successful, and there's an alternate universe somewhere where Hammer was successful in adapting modern plays to movies. And I would have liked to have seen more of that. I think it's a missed aspect of this studio's output. Occasionally I go to rural thrift shops and charity stores, and on the shelves I'll see a whole bunch of Dennis Wheatley's novels because someone's family has donated them there after Grandpa stepped on the rainbow. Wheatley was a prolific author in the early and mid-20th century. In 1940 he was the Stephen King you had before Stephen King was born. He wrote widely in different genres: crime novels, occult thrillers, science fiction, spy novels, and lost world adventure stories. And in his spare time, he invented board games. There have only been 6 adaptations of Wheatley's work as films, and Hammer made 4 of them. This one, based on Wheatley's novel Uncharted Seas, is a weird little film. A sketchy tramp steamship, owned and operated by Captain Lanson, played by Eric Porter, is travelling between Africa and South America with a crew of character actors including ubiquitous Michael Ripper, a set of dodgy engines, and a dangerous cargo including drums of white phosphorus which ignite when exposed to water. We also meet the passengers, all of whom have their own secrets. After a storm and a dangerous leak in the hold where the phosphorus is stored, the ship drifts into an unknown part of the Sargasso Sea where the crew and passengers encounter a sentient, carnivorous form of seaweed and the descendants of shipwrecked Spanish conquistadors and inquisitors, who are attacking some other survivors who live on an island. Throw into the mix a giant octopus and crabs the size of Volkswagens, and you have a weird film that you don't for a second think wasn't filmed on a studio set, but you enjoy it while you're watching it. All of the actors, including Tony Beckley, Hildegard Neff, Susanna Lee and Neil McCullum, play it all deadpan straight. So why is it a hidden gem? Because I'm a sucker for old school Lost World movies with janky special effects and monsters that look like they were stolen from parade floats. The Lost Continent has some of the same feel as those kooky Amicus Lost World movies Doug McClure made in the 1970s, and that's why I like it. The second Dennis Wheatley adaptation in this list is a smaller budget occult thriller based on the novel of the same name. The movie is set in 1929, and we have Christopher Lee in good guy aristocrat mode, playing Nicholas, Duc de Richelieu, a character who appeared in 11 of Wheatley's occult novels. Assisted by his friend Rex Van Ryn, played by Leon Green, but with his voice dubbed by Patrick Allen. The Duke finds that another friend, Simon, played by Patrick Mower, has been drawn into a dangerous devil-worshipping cult. The cult leader, Makata, is played by perennial bad guy Charles Gray, in pretty much the same mode as Niall McGuinness's Julian Carswell from Curse of the Demon. They were both, of course, based on Aleister Crowley, the early 20th century mystic, and it shows. But this one has a great pedigree, and that's why it's a hidden gem. It's got a script by Richard Matheson and direction by Hammer veteran Terence Fisher, and it avoids the trend at the time for nudity and gore for really effective suspense sequences and intriguingly applied special effects. This change of emphasis makes it feel less like a typical Hammer production. It's an interesting occult thriller, and Christopher Lee is really good as the Duke. You should check it out. The 1970s changed exploitation movies. We got more gore, more nudity, and more kung fu. Hammer's second collaboration with the Shaw Brothers Studios in Hong Kong, after the weird, ludicrous and entertaining Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, is a kung fu action flick starring Stuart Whitman, and in his last role for Hammer, Peter Cushing, playing the spy master Ratwood.
My name's Ratwood. Security division, actually.
Same thing.
I suppose so, technically speaking.
The original director, Monty Hellman, was sacked after 2 weeks and the production was taken over by the producer, Michael Carreras. And the whole thing was shot on location in Hong Kong. Whitman plays a high-paid assassin, Shatter, much in the line of Shaft and Slaughter. You've got to have that S thing with a T in it as the name of your protagonist in a 1970s action movie of a certain kind. After assassinating the president of an African nation using a camera gun, Shatter flies to Hong Kong to get his money from the man who hired him, Hans Lieber, played by Anton Diffring. Lieber double-crosses him and gets his henchmen to try to take out Shatter with a rifle-propelled grenade through the window of his shabby little hotel room in Wan Chai. He meets a masseuse played by Lily Lee, and a friend of hers who's a kung fu expert, Tai Pei, played by Lung Ti, who was part of Shaw Brothers' wuxia movie ensemble at the time. Shatter then plots his revenge. This doesn't look like a Hammer movie at all. We get an international martial arts tournament held in a nightclub for some reason, and kung fu battles in shabby locations across Hong Kong. It doesn't always look great, but it's a weird outlier of Hammer's catalogue that after a slow start gets into a solid 1970s action beat that takes us to the usual conclusion. Stuart Whitman was fairly ill at the time of production, so a lot of the action is carried by the kung fu characters, but it kind of works. So why is it a hidden gem? Peter Cushing was on location for 4 days of shooting in Hong Kong, and he steals the movie. His nasty Ratwood gets all the best dialogue, and he makes the most of it. It's a lot of fun to see him in a bit of a different role for the studio.
Shatter.
Hammer and the Shaw Brothers were always a weird partnership that never really gelled. In 1974, particularly after Bruce Lee hit the zeitgeist like a well-swung nunchuck, cinemas were hungry for any kung fu content, and Hammer, to its credit, was always willing to give new things a go. As I said in the first part of this look at Hammer's hidden gems, the studio is one of my favourites. It was willing to go into different genres. It had a long and interesting history. And people who grew up with the Hammer horror movies always have a love for them, even when they are janky and silly, and maybe not of the top quality. So thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to, please consider subscribing, hitting the notification bell and giving this a thumbs up. And let me know what your Hammer hidden gems are. I know there are a lot of Hammer movie fans out there, and it'd be good to find out some of the stuff that other people really love. So as usual, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies, watch some Hammer horror movies. And I'll catch you next time.